Hello everyone. Welcome to the new module Selection Statements Part 2. In this module, we will continue with the selection statements and we will talk about the remaining selection statements that we have left, which is the switch statement. And we will also talk about the ternary operators of Java. Okay, so let's get started. In the previous module, when we first talked about the selection statements, we stated that the selection statements are one of the three control flow statements that we have in Java, and they are used for decision makings. Okay, and there are different types of selection statements. We have if statements, and we also have the switch statement, which means the switch statement, it can also be used for decision makings in Java. But the way that the switch statement works is a little different than the if statement. The switch statement, it executes the statements based on a value of a variable or an expression. However, the value of a variable that you pass in the switch, it cannot be Boolean like the if statements. Okay? And this switch statement, it executes one statement from the multiple conditions that you have. So when I create a switch statement, first I give the switch keyword, and then within the parentheses, I will pass expression. The expression that I pass here, it needs to be a value, okay? And then after the expression, I need to define the scope of the switch statement by using opening and closing curly braces. And inside the switch statement, I could have multiple case blocks, okay? Depending on how many possible outputs that you have, then you will create the same number of case blocks. And you also have a block known as default block, which will be executed if none of those case blocks are being executed. Each case block, they do have a value, case value. If the case value is matching with this given expression, then the case block gets executed. But if the case value is not matching with the expression, then the case block does not get executed. It will check the next case block. Okay, so whichever case block's value is matching with the given expression of the switch statement, then that's the case block that gets executed. If none of the case blocks are matching, then the default block gets executed. Okay, so the execution flow of the switch statement is similar to the multi-branch if statement. It's like the if else if ladder statement. Okay, because in the multi-branch if statement, only one block would get executed depending on which block came first that has the true condition. If none of those conditions are true, then the else block would be executed. In the switch statement, it's also the same. If none of the case blocks are being executed, then the default block gets executed. If one of the case blocks value is matching with the switch statement's expression, then that case block gets executed immediately and switch gets terminated. If you did use the break statement to terminate the switch within that case block's body. And the switch statement, it works with the byte, short, int, char, string, and the enum types. Where in the if statement, you had to pass Boolean expression as the within the parentheses of the if statement. But when you work with the switch statement, you can pass only one of those types as the expression of the switch. Okay. And when you create a switch statement, there are a couple rules that you have to follow. As soon as you pass one of those types in the switch statement's expression, like byte, short, int, char, string, and enum, one of those types, after you pass them in the switch statement's expression, next you need to create the case blocks and give the case values. And when you give the case values, there are several rules that we need to pay attention to. Case values can be literal or constant, but no variables. Okay, the case value that you give here must be a literal, a value, or a constant constant name. The constant, you will learn it in the near future. Okay, but if you pass the variable as the case value, then it's going to give you an error. It cannot be variable. And case value, it must be unique with no duplicates. So which means if multiple case blocks are having the same value, it is going to cause errors. Every case block must have a unique value. Okay. And you do not use the curly braces for those case blocks. We use the column. Okay. So if so we use the column, it means that this case block will continue to execute the code fragments that are given until the break statement. Okay. So if you want to close this case block, you could use the break statement because when the break statement gets executed, it's going to it is going to terminate the switch, meaning that none of those other blocks of the switch gets executed afterwards. Okay. The break statements that we give in the case blocks are optional, but when you don't give the break statement, what happens is after the first case block gets executed, the remaining case block will continue to be executed. Okay. So if you want to terminate the switch after the execution of that specific case block, then it's required for you to give the break statement. And if the multiple case blocks needs to execute the same set of code fragments, we could declare those case blocks back to back. We can group multiple of those case blocks. After first case block's value, we can give the comma and then give the next case block's values. Okay. And here are the difference between the if statement and the switch statements. So when you use the if statement allows multiple expressions for multiple choices. But the switch statement, when you use the switch statement, it is single expression for multiple choices. Okay. And if statement that you use, it checks for the Boolean expression. It could be any Boolean expression, such as equal, not equal, contains, not contains, okay, greater, less than, any Boolean expression can be given in the if statement. However, when you use the switch, you only pass a value for the switch statement's expression, and the only condition that the switch statement checks is it only checks for equality for the fixed data values. Okay. And the if statement, it is slower compared to the switch. Switch statement is significantly faster than the if statement because it will directly compare the values that are matching with values that are equal. Then it will execute the case block that has the matching value. And when you use the if statement, code may be complex and hard to read and edit, but with the switch statement, code is more concise and readable and easy to edit. Okay, so that's just they are the difference between the if statement and switch. Next, let's work on a practice task where we can use the switch statement. In this task, you are required to write a program that creates a calculator by using these switch statements. Okay, and the calculator can evaluate the basic arithmetic operations such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and the division. Okay. And if the given operator is not one of the above, then it should display invalid operator, this output. Okay. So please create a new package. Name it module 15, selection statements part 2. Selection statements part 2. And then please create a new class named calculator. Okay. So the requirement of the task is on your presentation slide. So we need to write a program that can do those basic mathematical operations, plus, minus, multiplication, and division. Okay. So in this program, 3 informations must be given: the first number, the second number, and the mathematical operator. Okay. So to store those 3 informations, I will first create 3 variables. I could use double for the first and second numbers. Because when you use double, you could store the integer numbers and you could also store the decimal numbers into the variables of double. But at the end, it will return you a floating point value. So here's my num1. Okay, suppose that num1 that is given is 100. And here's my num2. And the given number for num2 is 20. And if you want to make it more readable, you could also start this one starting from the new line. Okay, two variables, two numbers are given now. And then next, I need the operator. Okay, the mathematical operator. Suppose that the operator is the addition. Next, I need to use the switch statement that can calculate the result of those two numbers by using those informations that are given. Okay. So the calculation will be depending on this operator, right? So if the operator is plus, then I need to add those two numbers. But if the operator is minus, then I need to subtract the second number from the first number. Okay. So for each of those operator, I could create separate case blocks. So since I have four possible operators, for those four possible operators, we can create 4 case blocks. But in the switch statement, when I declare the switch statement, see, first you give the switch keyword and then the parentheses, right? In the parentheses here, you need to pass an expression. What should be my expression that I need to pass here? The expression that you pass here needs to be this operator. Okay? Because we need to calculate those two numbers based on the operator. And then after finish passing the expression, next you need to define the scope of this switch statement. Okay? And then in the switch statement, you will create all the case blocks that are needed. And if you want to execute certain code fragment when none of the case blocks are matching, then you will declare the default block. So let's create them one by one. So I want to create the case block for the plus. And when you create the case block, first you give the case keyword, next you need to give the case value. As we stated earlier, the case value, it must be a value. It cannot it must be a literal or constant. Okay? But it cannot be a variable. If I try to pass a variable, you see, it is giving me this error. So it needs to be a value. So let me create the case block for the operator of addition. After the case value, for this block, you will give this as columns to define the scope. Okay? So after the column, you could give as many code fragments as you want within this case block. And if you want to end the case block, you have to give the break statement. Okay? Otherwise, if you do not end the case block after this case block gets executed, it will continue to execute the next case blocks that you have. So I could use the break statement to terminate the switch when this case block gets executed after the execution of this case block. So if the given operator is plus, then I need to calculate the addition, right? So therefore here, I could display the string of text addition, and then I will concatenate the addition result of those two numbers. Okay. So to make sure that the addition of those two numbers will be concatenated, I will use this parenthesis to calculate the addition. num1 plus num2. Okay. So when this case block gets executed, it prints this statement on the console and then it terminates the switch. And what if the operator that is given is not plus? Then it could be minus, right? It could, if it's not the addition, then it could be the subtraction. So for subtraction, I could create another case block. Okay. You see, why am I getting this error right here as soon as I give the subtraction within the string? Because in the switch statements expression, the value of the switch statements expression is char. The case value that you are giving in the switch statement, it must match with the value of switch statement's expression. So if I try to give this minus operator as a string, that's why it is giving me this error. So instead, I should be using this single quote for the char. And what if I use this plus operator? What if I give this this character for the case value? Now it's also giving me error because case values, they must be unique. They must be unique and they must be matching with the switch statement's expressions. Okay. So here's our minus. And I could copy this line and paste it here, change it afterwards. If it is minus, then our output should be the subtraction. Subtraction of num1 and num2. And again, I still need to give the break statement to terminate the switch. As soon as this case block gets executed, it needs to print the subtraction and then it should terminate the switch so that no other case block will be executed again. Okay. And after the subtraction, we still have two more cases that we need to create. So let me just copy paste it for the next one. It could be the multiplication, right? And when the multiplication, when this case block gets executed, it should print me multiplication. And it should return me the multiplication result at the end. Okay. And I also need to create another case block for the division. So this case block is for division. And let me change it here. Division. So you see, 4 case blocks we have created. As long as this operator is matching with one of those case blocks values, then one of those case block will get executed. Okay. But what if the given operator is not one of those? Then it should be invalid, right? So for that, I am going to need the default block. Okay. For that, I'm going to need the default block. And when this default block gets executed, I would like to print invalid operator. And when it comes to the default block, if the default block was placed at the very end of the switch, so if it is placed right before the closing curly brace of the switch, then you don't need to give the break statement. You could also give the break statement here, but it's not necessary. Because after the execution of this default block, switch is terminated. Okay? So there's no need for this break statement if the default block is placed at the very end. But if you place the default block at somewhere else, at the beginning, for example, then you would need the break statement to make sure that after the execution of this default block, the switch gets terminated. Okay? So yes, the default block, you can place it at anywhere, but it will only get executed when none of those switch blocks values are matching with this given expression. Okay? But usually it is preferred to place this default block at the very end of the switch so that we don't need to give the break statement afterwards. Okay? So that there will be one last statement that you will give if you place the default block at the very end. And this is also a good practice. So make sure that next time when you create the switch statement, try to give the default block at the very end. So now if I run my program, since this is the operator that I gave, see, it is giving me this addition. Okay? And if the operator was minus, then it would give me the subtraction, which is 80. And let's also test the other operators to make sure that it's giving us the right output. With this time it gave me the multiplication. And if I use the division, see, I got the division result. But what if I give some invalid operators such as the pound? Then it printed invalid operator. Okay. And let me take out those break statements to see what will happen if we did not give the break statement after each of those case blocks. Okay. So I deleted those break statements. Now let me try to calculate the addition of those two numbers. So the given operator is addition now. So if I run the program, you see, it calculated the addition, it printed the addition. At the same time, it also printed the subtraction, multiplication, division, and it also printed invalid operator. Why? Here's what happened. Since you do not have the break statement, it means after the case block is executed, the next case block will continue to be executed. So this value is matching with this case value, right? Which means this case block gets executed. So you see, case block started here, and it printed this addition. Since there is no break statement, it will continue to execute the next case block until it reaches another break statement or until it reaches the closing curly brace of the switch. That's why it's continuously executing the remaining case blocks until it reaches the closing curly brace, since we don't have any other break statement. If there was a break statement somewhere like here, even though it started executing this case block, since there is no break statement, it will continue to execute the next case blocks until it reaches the break statement. So therefore, addition, subtraction, multiplication now would be printed on the console. Okay. So that's why if you want to make sure that the switch statement gets terminated after the execution of that specific case block, you need to give the break statement. Okay. If you don't give the break statement, that means it will continue to execute the remaining case blocks. Thank you so much, everyone. See you all in the next video.